So hang in, one more, okay? I'll really try to power through it, stay on theme, get this done. So that is my name, Laura. I work for the Gambling Awareness Program. It's part of the Canadian Mental Health Association. So we talk about gambling, video games, and social media. And we talk from a whole range of from youth to adults. So I'm going to try to really just hit on a couple of the main points that people, ask the most about that would relate to kids the age that we're talking about here, and try to give you guys some background information. We'll just jump through this. So we're an educational awareness program, and that's really what we do. We try to give like a neutral, empowering message with a range of information to deal with these issues we see coming up. So I'm just going to get right into it here with gambling. So everybody kind of thinks, well, you know what gambling is. Well, gambling is just betting or risking something when you don't know what's going to happen. Usually people are trying to do it for some kind of reward. We think about it all the time with money, playing games, which is, that's commercial gambling. That's what we talk about the most. That's where we're seeing some of the issues. But often people have like a very specific idea of what that looks like and forget that like actually kids see it everywhere, and it's kind of integrated into their lives to begin with. Because things like fundraisers, raffle draws, bingos, 50-50s, chase the ace, all the stuff that comes up in sports really gets them playing these games to begin with when we're at a young age. And so it's not just, playing poker and playing the slot machines that we always think of. But when we're really getting into where there might be an issue, we're talking more about the technology and the way that it interacts with gambling. So just 3 things that are a part of all the organized commercial gambling games. Everybody's heard the expression, the house always wins, which it wins most of the time. So that's one thing that's really clear for people to understand right from the beginning, is that gambling is an entertainment business, and it is designed for the business to make money. So lots of people don't understand that. They think that there's a whole bunch of chance or anything can happen. You can make out really big. Gambling is designed with that house advantage through the rules, the regulations, the calculations, the designs all of that is in place so that no matter what, over time, the business makes money, not the players. If the player plays consistently, the money will always go back to the business. So that's something we just try to make clear to youth to begin with. They think it's like a way to, get rich quick, and there's always these stories. You can always find a story to validate it if that's what you're looking for. So we really just want people to understand that it is set up as a business. The business is going to make money, not the players. And so the forms of gambling that we're seeing with the highest risk associated with it, high risk for losing quite a bit of money, but also high risk for developing a gambling disorder. No real surprise there is online gambling. Because it's so accessible, you can do it anytime, anywhere. It's really easy to hide. It's just simple as thinking like, how often do you check your phone, right? When you have like even just 30 seconds where you're not doing anything, we check our phones all the time. And so once people log in, they give that information, they're registered. It's like you're getting notifications, you're getting emails, you're getting promotional offers. Algorithms are a part of all these apps as well. So it really kind of tracks our specific information, targets people a bit in that way. And that makes it really hard for people to regulate. So that's just sort of the basic design of how accessible it is. But then when we get into anything on the screen with online gambling and technology, there's a whole bunch of other mechanisms in the design that really interact with our brain chemistry and the way that we function that can make it really difficult for people to regulate as well. So I'll get into that a little bit more here as we go through some of it. Because that brings me to sports betting, which I'm sure most of you guys have heard. There's been in the news. There's lots of scandals always going on with sports betting. And unfortunately, sports betting has become one of the higher risk forms of gambling that there is. It has the fastest growing rates of gambling disorder associated with it. And it is with a younger demographic. So specifically males from the ages of about 18 to 35. That's kind of the core group that are kind of targeted with this form of gambling. And there's quite a lot going on here that is the reason why it's become such high risk. It's kind of bringing these 2 components together of emotion, right? People love sports, they love their team, they're stressed, they're excited, they're into the game, they want to prove they know into the game. There's all these things wrapped up into it. And then there's the technology that makes it really accessible and really, really fast and stimulating. So sports betting has changed a lot in Canada in the last 10 years. And now because we can bet on our phones with an app, I think they measured, the research was showing that if somebody wants, they can bet every 20 seconds during a live game. So that's almost like playing a VLT machine. So it's really, really fast, really, really stimulating, can be really, when you mix that with the emotions, the decision making can become impaired. And then there's also this idea that it's a game of skill. And if you have enough skill, if you're smart enough, you can figure it out, you can win your money back. There's a lot kind of mixed into it that is ending up making it really quite high risk for people. And so we're seeing it really condoned. It's become really popular. I think, like Kelly was saying, that people are sports betting and playing gambling games all the time when they're on the road and traveling. It's really become something that's increased like drastically in the last few years. So it is something to really talk to your kids about because it starts really young. We just had a request to go down to Lumsden last year because there was a group of 15-year-olds who had pooled all their money and bet like $700 or something on sports betting. They can get on to them even though there's age restrictions. It's really easy for kids to get bypass those restrictions. So really want to start talking to them about it, that it's not just about whether you win or lose the money. There is other risks because we do know that the younger that people start gambling, especially when it's in an online form with a screen and the technology, that it can affect their brains to then be kind of like a conditioning or a precursor to struggling with gambling when you're older. So it does really matter when they start doing it, when they start accessing these games on the apps. And these are just some of the other issues that kind of happen when we're talking about sports betting. Like I said, there's a lot that's kind of rolled into it that makes it a little bit more risky. I said that already. It's on the rise, and it's really related to younger adults and sports betting. And so when we're talking about, often people ask a lot about, like, do video games lead to gambling? It's a complicated answer. The short answer really is no, which is good. Video games don't cause gambling disorder, but there are mechanisms in video games that can be quite problematic when we talk about gambling. So it's really about understanding the games that the kids are playing and what is built into them, because there's some that can be problematic. Most of them aren't. As far as gambling goes, some of them are. So it's also about understanding that there's reasons why kids love to play video games. They can get beneficial things out of it. It's not all bad. Things like, being entertained, just passing the time, that all makes sense. Socializing, getting a sense of, completion or competition. They can be building skills like critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork. All that stuff really can be happening in a video game. So if you're concerned about any youth time that they're spending playing a video game, it's really about trying to reflect too on, are they engaged? What are they getting out of it? And how much time is maybe being spent being zoned out? Those are really the markers about whether it can be benefiting them or it can be sliding into something more harmful. So it's really, and it's hard to tell because it won't necessarily look that way when we're just looking at a kid playing a video game, but we really have to have that kind of honest conversation with them to see what are they getting out of it? What do they like it? And that you can be getting those things out of it, but maybe not 8 hours a day, every day. That's pretty difficult to do. And then when it comes to, sorry, I'm kind of running all over the place here because I'm trying to think, let's do this fast. Okay. Couple other things. So it's not just about, like, do video games, set us up to be gambling? But there are a couple kind of design features that are related more to gambling that we are concerned about. So the near miss is something that comes up quite a bit in video games that is really related to gambling games as well. So often you're playing a game, they're working at it for quite a while. It looks like they're just about to win, and then at that last second you lose. And that's actually really hard on our brains. You just have an emotional response to that, whether you want to or not. And it's the same with a gambling game. People actually, their brains almost light up the exact same way if they almost win than if we do win. Okay, so it just sort of happens. We don't really have that choice about it. So when this is built into the games for kids, it makes it really, really difficult to stop. A near miss is seen as an almost win, and we want to try to get there. It's really natural. Like, if you're almost there, that's not when you quit and walk away. You try again, right? And they try again and try again. And then it kind of can be held in like that holding pattern, that loop. A video game, often people play over and over again and just can't quite get there. that frustration can really start to rise, which again is like a pretty normal response to not quite being able to finish something. But because it's being held in that loop in the video game, it can escalate into that more kind of like gamer rage, emotional outburst that we kind of see people doing. So it's really about understanding that it's normal to have that frustrated response when it looks like you're close but can't get there. But that's a time to really check in with your emotions and know that that's a signal to take a break. So that's something we talk a lot about with youth, is it's really about them being honest with themselves, empowering themselves to think about why they're playing and what they like about it, what they get out of it, and pay attention to how you feel. And try to encourage them to take that responsibility themselves and make their own choices as well. Because our own monitoring and scheduling of like how much gaming is allowed, what time to take breaks, will really only go so far. At some point, we really want to have them be a part of it, be really aware of how it's affecting them and how they're feeling. And this is another thing that comes up in video games, and this is directly related to that kind of precursor I said for a video game kind of leading to more gambling. Simulated gambling comes up a lot in video games, where kids can like play poker, play blackjack, that kind of thing, but you're not betting any real money. And so often they think, well, there's really no risk. But there still can be risk involved. One, sometimes people don't understand that when you're playing like the fake gambling game with no money, it's really, really easy to win. You win over and over and over again. Then they kind of get that idea that, oh, I've learned how to play poker though, how different could it be? You go to another website where it costs money, and then it really changes. But also the big thing is that we know if kids play these games a lot, not like every, once a year kind of thing, if they play them a lot, it does then start to condition them to take those risks with gambling, especially in the design format, like on a screen online, where you're getting those kind of dopamine hits and rushes. And so that can be a risk, that just because you're not spending any money when you're playing the game, it still can be doing something to kind of condition them to gamble more later. Okay, so that was kind of about video games, and talk a little bit about social media as well, because it all relates to just, it's really difficult, right? We have so much access to screens. We're not going to get rid of that. The technology is there. So it's really about getting like a broader perspective of what's going on for kids and understanding how to support them in making their choices. Because like I said, just trying to cut off the phones and take them out of the picture probably isn't going to work very well. So if we're looking at social media, again, it's important to understand that there can be benefits to it. Like you can be connected and learn new things. That's usually the things kids say the most that they like about it. Just being entertained, talking to their friends, learning new things that they're interested in. And again, that's really good. But with social media, because it's designed to be so passive, we just sit there and look at it and scroll. It's really easy to zone out really, really quickly. And so we usually aren't getting this good stuff out of it for very, very long. So that's something we need to talk to them about too. It's about, okay, before you open up the app, think about why you're going on there, what you want to do, and then pay attention to how you feel. And again, we try to kind of put that forward as like, it's really up to you to be honest with yourself and make your own choice. Because if you aren't making your choice, there are things that are designed into the apps themselves that are kind of intentionally there to keep us for a longer amount of time. And so if we're not thinking about it, then it's kind of like the companies are doing the choice making for you. So we sort of put it in that context to really give that idea of like, it's really about you guys deciding for yourself and just figuring out how to do what you want to do and not have somebody else tell you, which I mean can kind of work, right? With teenagers, we're still trying to give them advice, but if you kind of trick it a little bit, like make your own choices, then it can help a bit. So and the other thing is that what is happening with this technology is that kids are constantly getting dopamine hits when we're on a screen. We all are, not just kids, but we all are. And they're very susceptible to that. And so it's a lot easier to pick up a screen, get those tiny little dopamine hits and be distracted than it is to find them in real life. But that's something that we really need to talk to them about and try to support and encourage and model. And it doesn't have to be, hard work stuff. It is about getting kids to just do the other things that they actually really enjoy and have fun doing. And like understanding that we got to be getting these benefits, whether it's connection, competition, support, learning new things, all this stuff, we need to get it from a whole bunch of different sources, not just from the easiest source, but also the most superficial source, which is our screens. So we got to really kind of encourage that, especially with boredom. Boredom is a really big thing. right? Especially for children, it's really hard for them to tolerate that feeling of boredom. And so instead of trying to say, no, figure it out yourself, it might be time to, just for a temporary amount of time, facilitate a bit of understanding. We need to find different things, not just always doing the same thing or the easiest thing when we're feeling bored. And that really can help with them getting those different kinds of emotions and stimulation from other places than just from the screen. So when we're talking about prevention, whether it's about prevention, something as extreme as a disorder there is actually a video game disorder and gambling disorders, or whether it's just about seeing, that this might be a slightly unhealthy coping mechanism, or they're spending too much time with this behavior. So if we're thinking about, we want to prevent and add some support for that, we're really encouraged to look at it in this kind of 4-quadrant approach. Which is bringing in the idea of social responsibility, like talking to kids about, when you're online, that's still a space of where you're expected to uphold social morals and values and behave in a certain way. That can really go a long way to empowering them and feeling like they're part of a community. Connection is really, really crucial when we're talking about this, that we need to be able to have create the space where we can actually have conversations where kids get to be heard too. And so that's where we can set up those routines, but doing it in collaboration as opposed to this kind of control over. Because that will only work usually for very short time, usually when kids are really young. We want to be setting it up more, like we said, for them to be taking responsibility for themselves and feeling proud about themselves for what they're doing, checking in with themselves about how they really feel. And so to be able to do that, it's about really building that connection and having that communication with them to begin with. Digital literacy, that's kind of what we're talking about. Some of those design features, some of the things that we need to understand or look out for can get really complex. I mean, there's so much stuff, but even if we can just hit on a couple things of talking about whether we need to learn it ourselves so we understand what our kids are doing, how does the app actually work? Are there features on there that we need to get in and shut off? Or whether you're explaining to your kid how it works too. Just a couple key points like that can go a really long way to keeping them more safe and just understanding how the app is actually being used. And so we know that could help a bit with the regulation of it. And then this piece of self-awareness, like we're talking about, just really that idea of think about why you're going on there, pay attention to how you feel. That's actually a skill set. Sometimes we kind of take it for granted, that well, I always know how I feel. But sometimes we actually do kind of need to pause and check in, especially when we're doing something on a screen, because it's so easy to disassociate. And that's when we're really not paying attention then and making choices. So if we kind of break it down to those 4 areas, there's no right or wrong really. It's just about relating to your kid, remembering that there's kind of a whole bunch going on there. And it's really about, which kind of most of us have talked about tonight, it's more about what you bring in for support as opposed to limiting and setting control and barriers. We need to bring in more things that are supportive, having kids feel more connected and having more communication so that we can just understand what's going on. Because we're not going to get rid of the phones and social media and video games. So we really need to kind of be bringing these things in to help adding for resiliency and support for kids. Couple protective factors in a kid's life is really just one adult who's consistent, trustworthy, and reliable. That goes a long, long way in a kid's life. And helping them understand their coping skills is really, really important, because it's kind of human nature that we will reach out for whatever is the most accessible when we're in crisis. So we really need to figure out before crisis comes, what can we reach out for, what will help us. And sometimes, especially with youth, we need to model that. We need to talk to them about that beforehand, because when something happens, when they're just stressed or tired or having a bad day, like we all do, often, we just do the easiest thing. We pick up our phone, we watch TV. That's kind of where it starts. So we want to really start talking about those coping skills and seeing what other kind of more supportive options there can be that actually result in support. Because if it doesn't actually feel like support for a kid, they're not going to reach out for it later. So it has to be kind of genuine. Risk factors to watch out for. So risk factors are really about, we know that, for some people that when we have these risk factors in our life, they often are outside of our control, and they do mean that sometimes we may struggle with like coping mechanisms or behavioral addictions at a higher rate. So things like a history of mental health or challenges in our family, our access to social activities and hobbies and being able to be part of a community, instability in our environment. These are really big risk factors that can affect whether people might struggle with things as we go through our life, including children. And children especially don't have any control over this. So it's about coming back to these protective factors too, because they really can interact. And when we have risk factors, it means we need more support. It's not about, feeling ashamed or that there's something wrong with us or deficient. It's that we just need more support because these things are here. Couple tips if you're looking for kind of like in the moment when things are a struggle, and maybe don't have time to have this like kind of well-rounded communicative approach. Sometimes we just need to do a couple things to be supportive and helpful. So setting limits still can be really helpful, especially when kids are young and they're, more responsive to following limits. Setting those time limits and having things like that, forming a routine, making sure you're checking safety settings on the apps. A lot of apps, when you install them, will come with location sharing, things like that turned on. We want to make sure we go in there and check them, shut them off, make sure that there isn't, live streaming options, things that kids can accidentally access that sort of exposes them to the wider world of the internet. Definitely trying to keep phones and tablets away at night is a really good practice. Definitely keeping your credit card to yourself, not necessarily logging it in where they can go in and purchase things as they go, which can be really difficult with video games. Sometimes that happens, so just trying to keep an eye on that. And agreeing on the strategies that you want to use, bringing the kids in, talking about like, let's decide together what strategies we're going to use, what approach we're going to use. That can really go a long way as well too. Signs of trouble are if, we see that they're starting to lose interest in other things that they used to care about, that there's lots of mood swings, struggling with emotional regulation. Those are all little signs that something might be going on there, and if we're seeing them kind of move towards only gravitating towards a screen to deal with what's going on, and these things are also taking place, you do want to like take that pretty seriously, because all it means is there's more support needed. We need kids to be getting support from another place, not just from isolating on a screen, where they might be feeling like they're getting a break from something they're struggling with, but it usually has more to do with dissociation. So we want to bring it back to connection support as opposed to escaping support. Go through that. And this is just the last piece I want to touch on really, really quick, because I think it has a lot to do with sort of just changing our perspective and how we understand what's going on when we're struggling with a behavior or a coping mechanism. Really, whether it's a behavior or a substance, we know that there's going to be foundational causes going on that are really universal for all of us. So everybody has universal needs that really we're not really paying attention to very much. Often it's kind of subconscious, but it is really what's driving why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm not going to take the time to kind of run through all these right now, but especially when we're talking about youth, like we really need to understand what it is that they're needing, what they're looking for. And often when we're choosing our behaviors, we're choosing it to either get one of these needs met or to try to escape the pain of not having the need met. And sometimes we'll live quite chronically for a long time without needs being met and not even really know it. So if we can reframe it a little different, it kind of gives more options and more ability for shifting than if we're looking at it as controlling kind of the symptom. If we look at it more of like what's really going on underneath, what do we need, what's causing pain, it really gives more options to understand and support each other, and definitely with youth as well. So it's something that I think is really relevant when we're talking about this stuff. Sometimes, we got to just like dive in head on. We got to set a limit here, make sure we get some changes happening on this level. But if we don't address this level too, then it can be really difficult to actually make that meaningful shift where a youth can really start to feel like they're thriving in their life and letting go of the behavior more easily because they're getting their needs met. So it can be really complicated. We don't have the time tonight to get into anything like trauma, but that can be a really huge barrier to getting these needs met. Trauma can look like something that's happening in a kid's life, but it also is often what's not happening. And that's harder to see from the outside. So we don't always know. You can know a child really well, know their family really well, and not really know whether there might be something kind of mixing in with their emotions, with their needs, like a trauma of an unmet need. And so it's just important to know that when something seems like it's not really making sense, like people are making choices that don't seem to be in their best interest, it's a good bet that there's something going on there kind of interacting between their needs, their experience, and maybe a bit of emotional discomfort or trauma. So it's kind of about bringing in this really big picture to help support what we're doing kind of in the day-to-day. And I won't, so this is just another way of looking at it. Like we don't usually talk this way about what we're doing, but like video games do meet kids' needs in some superficial and quick ways, and sometimes in some meaningful and supportive ways too. And same with social media. So we can start to think about it like that a little bit more. You know, maybe they're spending time on there because they're looking for belonging and connection, but we know you're not maybe going to get it at a deep level online, so we want to try to bring it in a more authentic way, in another way in your life. So those things aren't really quick fixes. It can take a lot more time for that, but if we bring that into, it usually has more meaningful changes in the long run for kids. And again, back to just having a whole bunch of different experiences. That can be something to kind of use as sort of a guide as well. Like if we're not sure what to do, let's just try to bring in more experiences so children really get to know who they are. When we're in different experiences, we learn a lot more about ourselves, and it gives us more resiliency to deal with what's going to happen in our lives. So it's kind of funny, you know, you start talking about gambling and video games and we end up kind of talking about this, but it's really like that big picture of understanding what's going on for everyone. Really about engagement and trying to avoid some of that passive escape, really bringing in that engagement. So I think I'll wrap it up there. Oh, here's some resources that are free and accessible for children. Children and Screens is a website that has excellent information and a whole range of topics about how youth can be, what challenges youth are facing when they're online and what they can do to support it. I've got cards at the back that are like little wallet cards that have a list of all these resources on there if anybody wants them. And I brought more information tonight, but it looks like it's gone. But if anybody wants more information from our program about like gambling, video game designs, anything like that, just let us know, because that's what we do. We just hand out more information and give resources to people too. So my card is at the back. Okay, were there any questions about that? No? Okay.
Thanks,
there, thanks guys.